My name is Gabrielle LaFrance, and today I brought in Margaret Brooks's watch that she was wearing when the Caribou sank. I do have a huge interest in history. I always have, and I'm very, very fond of museums, and I was really interested in giving tours, and I really do hope to keep doing it in the future. I don't know if it's going to be my career, but I do hope to keep doing it for some time.
Many people forget that the waters of Canada's Atlantic coast were an active battle zone during the Second World War. The Battle of the St. Lawrence was part of the larger Battle of the Atlantic, in which the Germans attacked the supply routes between North America and Britain. U-boats sank 23 ships in the waters of Quebec, the Maritimes, and Newfoundland. Hundreds of lives were lost. German subs made it as far up the St. Lawrence River as Rimouski and sent men ashore in Quebec and Labrador. The worst tragedy of the campaign was the sinking of the SS Caribou, a passenger ferry en route from Sydney, Nova Scotia to Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. 137 men, women and children would perish.
Would you like to share a little bit about what you brought with us today?
Sure. So today we have Margaret Brooks's watch, and I was wondering if you could tell me a bit more about Margaret Brooks.
Excellent. I'd be happy to. Margaret Brooks was a woman who was born in Saskatchewan in 1915. During the outbreak of the Second World War, initially, there was some restrictions on women enlisting in the forces. In 1943, she was able to enlist. She enlisted as a nursing sister because in the RCN, there was no designation for dietitian, so she enlisted as a sub-lieutenant. Once she had completed her training, she was posted to a variety of different hospitals across the country, but one of which was also an out-of-the-country international posting in Newfoundland, because as we all know, Newfoundland did not become part of Canada until 1949. During a return from leave, so she was given a break so she could go home, visit her family. So she took the train back to Saskatchewan, and on her way back, she was wearing this watch with her. She met her friend Agnes Wilkie, who was also a nursing sister and a sub-lieutenant in Winnipeg. They enjoyed their last few days of leave, and so when they got to Sydney, they arranged their transportation, figured out where they were supposed to go, and they got on a bus, and eventually they got on their ferry. And right before bed, she figured, I should probably figure out how these life belts work. Good thing she did, because unfortunately, in the early morning hours, the SS Caribou, which was a ferry that went back and forth between Sydney, Nova Scotia and Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. It was under convoy escort, so there was HMCS Royal Navy ships keeping an eye out for U-boats, because U-boats were a real and very present danger. And what ended up happening was a U-boat, the German submarine U-69, torpedoed the Caribou, and it sunk within 10 minutes or so. Margaret remembers being thrown across her room, landing on her friend Agnes Wilkie, and then together they found their coats. And she said, thank goodness Agnes remembered to find life belts, because they went up on deck, and she said it was a sign of chaos. They went to find their lifeboat had been destroyed. And people didn't know what to do, and they didn't know enough to jump over the side of the boat because the ship was sinking. So in the end, they were sucked down in the water, because when the ship sinks, it all that force sucks everything down with it. So they were submerged and somehow were able to cling together. And they came to the surface together and stayed together and found a wrecked lifeboat. And they were able to hold on to the ropes of this wrecked lifeboat until a soldier was able to help pull them up on top. The waves kept coming and coming and coming, and so they'd get knocked off the lifeboat and get back on. And eventually, Agnes she was too cold. She got hypothermia and she went unconscious. So Margaret held on to Agnes as much as she could. So every time a wave would come, Agnes would kind of float away, and Margaret would hold on to her as best she possibly could, until eventually she just couldn't hold on anymore, because it was around the break of dawn, and about half an hour later, one of the original RCN escort, HMCS Grandmere, was returning, because as per protocol, they chased the U-boat to see if they could take out the threat before returning to pick up survivors. And so she was rescued. Unfortunately, Agnes Wilkie was not. What's particularly moving about this watch is that she was wearing it when she was on the Caribou and it was sunk, and when she got back to shore and had recovered, she never had it fixed. So it's actually frozen in time to the time it was set when it went in the water. And she always kind of left that as a testament to that experience. It's a piece of the history of that exact event. When ships are lost, so much is lost with it, so you have so very little of the material cultural history available to help sort of be the proof when you're telling the tale. So it's items like this that help us tell that story. And for us, it's also very important to tell the story of the experiences of women in the Royal Canadian Navy at that time. And so to have a piece that is specifically connected to the event, for which Margaret Brooks was actually made a member of the Order of the British Empire, and she was the first Canadian nursing sister to be made so. So to have a piece that's connected to such an important woman in the history of the RCN, but then also to be directly connected to the event for which she is most known. I mean, she had a great career after that. She stayed in the Navy for 20 years. She retired to become a PhD paleontologist at the University of Saskatchewan. She was a formidable woman. This was really such an important moment in time, and so much so was she beloved as a hero of the Navy that the Royal Canadian Navy's actually named its second Arctic Offshore Patrol vessel after her, which is a first in that it is the first vessel to be named for a woman, and it is the first vessel to be named after a living human being, because the defense minister called her on her 100th birthday to let her know that they were naming a ship after her. And I'm pretty sure her response was, they just don't go around naming ships after anybody. So,
What are the museum's plans for the watch?
well, the watch is one of our feature artifacts in our brand new exhibition on the history of women in the Canadian Navy, because it wasn't always the Royal Canadian Navy. Featuring in the nursing sister section, and it will be on exhibit actively at the museum for the next few years.